Oh, and that's where you hid the bodies out in the Vegas desert, right?
Oh man,
We're back.
You just had to start like that. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Today I've got my good friend Drew Atienza on the show with me from VYV, or the director of VYV here in North America. And as you could tell, we're off to a rip-roaring start talking about, bodies being hidden in the desert. And we can start with that if you want, Drew. I'm totally open to having a conversation about, the best places to hide bodies. Because with you working in Las Vegas, I'm sure you've got a lot of insight as to where good body hiding can be.
It's something more that we should share over a drink at the no longer Circle Bar. So, but yeah, I've worked with security guys at the casinos that have talked about doing long drives into the desert and making things disappear. So it is a thing.
So do they always quote it as making things disappear?
Well,
they're not very specific. That's pretty vague.
Yeah. You never know what it could be. Evidence, whatever. Hey, Randall. Morning. Yeah, you never know what kind of evidence needs to go away. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, this is very true. I think we all have places that we hide our evidence. Our evidences. The rugs that we sweep things under, or the skeletons we store in the closet. We've all got them.
Yeah. Some people are better at hiding them than others, or have people that take care of it. So, yeah.
So, Drew, tell us a little bit about how you started in this friggin' crazy mess of a career we've got ourselves into. I mean, for me personally, I know that I'd never imagined in a million billion years I was actually going to start working in the video industry, or even on the manufacturing side of things.
Yeah, totally. Going way back, I used to be a child actor, and I loved, the whole environment of production environments. I was in like a few films as a featured extra, and voiceover stuff. And I remember at a point
child actor, like prodigy child actor.
Yes, indeedy. Yeah. Way back in the day, was in a couple things like the movie Jack with Robin Williams and J-Lo, which is funny because that comes back as I've worked with J-Lo on her Vegas residency and such. And there's a point of being like, say, a pudgy 13-year-old, which I was, and not wanting to have a job that relied on what other people thought of me, and instead of being what do I do and what value I bring to people. So I had, around that time, was getting into theater when we moved to Minneapolis from California. And I got into technical theater. I really liked that whole vibe and environment. And lighting was the thing back then that was the most high tech that was accessible to me as a kid. And, going to college, I was on track for lighting. And I came across, I think it was at a USITT, the high-end systems booth in Minneapolis that year. And it was Ruling Associates that was putting that on behalf of high-end systems. And they were in Maple Grove, which was like a 20-minute drive from my house. So I ended up getting an internship there. And I believe Ron Ruling, the owner of there, bought the first 2 Catalyst servers that were in the States. And so I had those sitting in my shop. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm talking like, Catalyst 1.2 on the G5 Max that we were working with.
I remember those days.
Yeah. So, I was like, this is the next hot thing. This is like really cool, high tech, working with computers. And I was able to modify my degree and basically did a technical theater major with a graphic design minor, because there was nothing at the time, there was no Full Sail or I think it's DePaul University now has their program. Like there was nothing like that back then.
There's a lot of, yeah. I mean, as you know, having Caitlin and Devin on the show a few weeks ago, just their story about opening up the program in Tribeca and talking about, basically projection mapping and bringing the technology back into the school, which is really cool. But we're seeing a lot more of that now. in the school systems.
I mean, it's awesome. I wish I had any of this stuff that is available now. It was really figuring out stuff yourself and seeing what worked, what didn't. There were very few people in the industry around that time that could intelligently talk about it. So while doing that, at the time, my dad worked for Northwest Airlines. He was with them for 40 years, even after they got bought by Delta. And I could fly anywhere for practically free because I was a dependent of my dad. And there was a thing that Projected Image Digital at the time in London had a conference about Catalyst and that stuff. And I flew there, and I was like the youngest person there. There's Richard Bleasdale, the guy that wrote Catalyst, Lee House, like all of these kind of industry folks, Nev Bull back then. And, we sat around and talked about this stuff. They were amazed that I was the only person from the States there, but, I was able to make these connections with these people early on when the industry was small, and then you see where it's gone since then. So, I did Catalyst after university. I got picked up by Cirque du Soleil for Chris Angel Believe at the Luxor Theater. That was all a Hippo show. I met Nigel Sadler, who was out there for that, one of the managing directors. And,
good old Nigel.
Yeah. Nigel was very kind in his training to me. Anything that I wanted to know about the system, how it worked, hacking some of the parts of Hippo to get what was needed. And that really expanded. And I was always a big fan of Magic, like Illusions, not Magic the Gathering, even though that's cool on its own. But Magic and Illusions, I always had a passion for that kind of stuff. And working on that show, I helped develop a few things that are used in it and got to have a working relationship with Chris. But, there were other things I wanted to do. I had seen Cirque du Soleil, and it wasn't like the typical Cirque show, and I thought there was more out there for me to do. They start to work on a new show in LA called Iris. And so I transfer over there after doing 3 years, I believe, and work on that show. And that's where I met VYV, Emmerich and Martin, and then also Alex at the time. And what they were doing at the time was so far advanced of anything else I had seen, doing, automatic guided calibration, really calculating things in 3D volumetric space. And I always kept in contact with them. From there, I had realized at that point, doing a permanent install show just wasn't for me. Getting it up and running is always fun, but I always like seeing the new tech and what you could do after that. And, I got a feel for operations after working for Cirque for 5 years of how do you maintain, run shows and operate a crew and then a union crew at the Kodak Theater at the time. And there was Francois Bergeon, who was at Thinkwell Group, one of the founders there. And he was doing the sound design, and a buddy of mine, Mike Brister, who was automation, then decided to go over to them and work in theme park design. And I thought that was really cool. I've always kind of fancied also being a Disney Imagineer at the time. And so, my friend. Yeah, totally. I mean, design and play with the latest tech to make cool stories happen, right up my alley. So I went over there and was doing theme park design work. I was a technical manager. We essentially worked with the creatives, and they would write out these narratives and storylines for parts of the ride, the queue. And what we would do is go through that narrative and then have a technical element sheet. So when they mention you're walking through the mist, well, the mist is a show act, an element that needs to be accounted for if that's going to be a fogger or whatever. And we would work with the creative team to kind of draw out what they were envisioning. And then we would also have weekly scrums and go over, hey, this is a cool tech that is new and coming out, and present that to the the story writers and the ride designers. And so it was a really cool place to learn how to collaborate with creatives and take an idea on the page and then figure out what it takes to put that into the real world with
make that dream a reality.
Yeah,
and
totally.
To be able to give back the replies, or the honest replies of what can and cannot be done.
Yep. Or what always comes down is budget. Like everywhere you see is like video background. Well, you're talking that's like over $100,000 just in content render time, all of that. So let's see. During that, we were working on a lot of projects that were in China, and I was missing being on site and actually having this stuff come to life instead of being all trapped in paper space and then waiting for approvals. That a theme park is anywhere from 2, 5, or 10 years in planning before you actually see it happen. Yep. And having worked in live shows, you kind of want that hit of instant gratification, So
it's kind of like a high. I always loved that adrenaline rush of designing a show, having a very limited amount of time to get it into a space, troubleshooting it, getting everything looking beautiful and show ready. And by that time, for me personally, I was done. Like my job at that point was done. And even pushing the go button on a lighting console or a desk at that time was still super cool. But for me, the rush was always like, is this going to work? Can I install it? What changes need to be done? What are the challenges that kind of come in front of being on a site that you've only been on a site survey for like, an hour or two, and then, packing it all up and going on to the next one. And I can totally relate with you about the projects are nice when it's, yes, Ken said, and when it's over, it's over. But the projects are really nice as well. And having that time span to be able to pre-plan and be able to put those things in place as well. And I think, there's definitely kind of a nice balance between being able to do them both.
Yeah, I think like throughout my career, it's always been kind of like trying to find that balance of the live craziness and having like, sometimes a 9 to 5 staying at home, like being able to be home. I mean, I would say from the moment after college, I barely saw my family. I was always on the road or, living in California, doing those shows and bouncing around the world. The next job I had after the ThinkWell group was with Techno Media Solutions, installing. We were doing all of the Hollister stores around the world, the live feed of Huntington Beach. And my first one was in Shanghai, China. And, that brought a whole nother level of issues where you have to design a system that nobody actually operates, and you need to be able to remotely fix the issue because it's not like there's that many trained technicians for, at the time, that was Hypnotizer Grasshoppers. And
I remember the Grasshoppers very, 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 very well.
So like making, trying to figure out things of like, okay, how can we put logic into the system so it could try to fix itself? How could you, what is the bare minimum that like a store manager on a crackly phone connection could do? And we put in all these kind of hooks and things to make it as reliable as possible. And if it's, if there was, like, we had a heartbeat monitor on it. So essentially it's a program that would send out a ping on a set interval. And if we stopped detecting that ping, then we would basically force a reboot or check the live feed. It would send us alerts. So I got to learn a lot from that of like, how do we set up these systems? And, what was cool is that you end up working with all these people that, for the vast majority of them, I really like, and they were very smart, and you could just kind of, over lunch, sitting on a road case somewhere, you could pick their brain about things and then gain that knowledge. And, I've always been interested in all aspects of production. So, sitting with the automation guys, talking about, their system, what are their troubles, what would make things easier, or, talking to sound guys, like, as we're seeing in the industry now, like everything is really all being tightly integrated. You have these immersive setups that, there's not only like 3D tracking of objects, but like if I put the object down here, we could detect a collision and trigger a sound effect and, do dynamic audio processing to localize it to that area. Like you're really having to talk to all of these systems. And luckily I've been on a giant, amount of varying degrees of system integrations that gave me a lexicon to speak to all of these people. And that's been really valuable, moving forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, and that point is a pretty good one to make. And by the way, Ken, I'm pretty jealous about all the St. Viator bagels you've been posting online. I've got to say, Drew and I were speaking about it a little bit before this all popped up, and I'm quite envious of you having all those bagels available. So, honey, just a mental note, we need to order some St. Viator bagels. But,
yeah, there weren't any bagels in the green room here. I thought you would have sent it. Your people need to get with my people and make that happen.
We're going to have to work that out. But you brought up a really good point about, being able to communicate with all the different departments and just learn about what is available and how things work. My dad always said that the best, I think I've said this actually on an episode in the past, but my dad always said that the best way to drive a car is to know how it's built and know how the parts work. You might not need to be a professional. Hey, Asad, you might not need to be a professional, but you do need to have awareness of, what a transition is or what a motor is and how the motor works and, what.
Well, like my dad is a maintenance crew chief, retired now, but I remember him always telling me like he would drive us to like judo practice, and that was like an hour each way sometimes. And he would go over troubleshooting planes and, how systems work. Like, there's actually two computers that control jet engines that are listening to all the same feedback, but they could vote one out if it thinks that, something isn't working right. I got to give a lot of credit to my dad on my troubleshooting skills and learning systems. Like if you learn how a system works, like what are the building blocks, you can usually futz your way around and be able to talk to others as to, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. I think it uses this block, and this block, and I think we could make something happen. There's so much of that that's happened. And I think it's called like knowing the parallel possible. Like when you look at what people are doing with, XR or virtual studio production, it was a parallel possible. The terms from, what is it? How We Got to Now, a really good book.
I love that term, parallel possible.
Yeah, these progressions come along and we're like, okay, we could do camera tracking and video game engines where you're really, your POV is a camera in a 3D scene. Mm-hmm. What if I make this all go like that and see what happens? Like, so much of the latest advances that we're seeing these days, besides, the pixel counts, render engines, all of that, is combining these different ideas to come up with something new and pushing that forward and trying to like figure out the workflows for it.
The crazy thing is to me is that, well, as well as I do, all of our media server products, for the most part, are all built around gaming technologies and gaming engines, or modified gaming engines, in some case, custom gaming engines. But it's still a bit of a surprise to me that, that aspect or the creative aspect has always kind of been there in our world. We've always been pushing the boundaries as far as technology goes. But only recently have we basically connected all the dots and said, okay, we've now got a tool like Unreal or Unity where you can just basically dump all your Lego pieces in, connect them all together and build out a thing that all intercommunicates and ties all together. And I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get there earlier. But again, I guess supply and demand and need and requirement.
Yeah, I mean the COVID situation right now of like, okay, how do we, build out, instead of doing on-site locations, like we're trying to limit everything. You kind of, it pushes things that way. And I can't remember who brought up the comment about parallel possible. It's from a book called How We Got to Now. I highly recommend it. It's about like things like being able to have clean drinking water. Like what did that enable? And, advances in polishing glass. Like what did that all, how that all connected. But yeah, the gaming engine, going back to that, there were early things that worked, but I think you sometimes just have to snap into the right application. Like you see so many ideas develop, but maybe they're going for one market and really it's a great tool for another. And now that everything is more online and people can, have the internet at their fingers, you can sometimes find, an idea that was working for one industry would work for another. And it just takes somebody looking for it and then reaching out and making it happen.
I couldn't agree with you anymore there. I mean, there's so many different types of technologies and resources that come into our industry that have never been created or invented for the use within our industry, but we adopt it, and we adopt it every single day. I mean, you're looking at, the use of LiDAR and how LiDARs kind of started to come into play. A lot of that was created, of course, for safety and autonomous vehicles and stuff like that. And it's been really interesting to learn, the crossover between a lot of the tech that is used in our industry and how much of that tech translates from other market segments or other industries, and even vice versa, stuff that we do in our industry, and then somebody else comes along and looks at what we're doing and they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what we need. How do you do that?
Yeah, so there's so many phone calls that we get about that kind of stuff, and it really geeks me out. Like, having a tool set, just like any media server, like you get to know all the ins and outs of it. And when people come, what I always like is somebody has a problem, and it's like, how can we help and either push something a little bit further, or it's easily adaptable. Like that's my favorite part of my job. And I think it's that and bringing stories to life. That is what I truly get joys out of in this industry. That can be making you like, you see how much gray hair I have? I'm blaming it all on this industry. So it's worth it, but maybe I should invest in some hair dye. Who knows? So,
nah, I think you're good, Drew. It makes you look more wise and
wise and learned man
and more experienced. So you don't really need to worry about that. I've actually got a bunch of gray hair too, but I've been pretty fortunate and pretty lucky. You brought up an interesting point just a little bit ago about you learning how much you learned from your parents and how much you learned from your dad just from his career. I thought it would be actually fun to throw out to the viewers. How many of you that are in the industry or even not, have parents that are, might have an engineering degree or engineering background, or, did a lot of STEM work with you guys when you were younger. My dad. Go ahead, Drew.
Oh, I was going to say, like, or even things that, like, is not directly applicable. Like I learned, I talk about my dad, but my mom of showing compassion and how to connect with people. Like anything that you've learned from somebody in your life, like, what were you able to take? How did the advice come? And, where do you see that applying today?
Yeah,
that'd be interesting to see.
My mom definitely gave me my compassionate side, and I blame her for my my outgoingness and for my the extrovert side of my life. Like that's definitely all driven and derived from my mom. But my dad was an electrical engineer and worked for General Motors for a very long time, and he brought me one of my favorite experiences when I was in my early teens. He brought me into the car plant in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, and showed me how a truck is built from the time that the materials arrived. And he brought me through the entire production line. And even back then, with the autonomous robots and the carriages that were inside of the car factories, and it was fascinating. And I can honestly say, like, it really kind of sparked a bit of a fire in my brain that said, this is really, really cool. I want to be a part of this somehow, some way, and well, I don't know if I took the right direction because I'm in the entertainment industry, but
yeah, when you would be disowned, like it's one of those industries where your family could disown you for being in showbiz. But, yeah.
Well, luckily, just like yourself, my parents were always super supportive all the way through and through. When I told them I wanted to be in theater and in performing arts and working behind the scenes, they supported me 100% through the whole endeavor and going through school and that whole period of life where you're experimenting with different things and trying to figure out what you want to do. Like they were awesome about that. So I can't be any more thankful to my parents. So thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Got to get the parent shout out. And I saw Devin ask a question. What I think it was, oh,
we could jump into Charles. Yeah, Charles was just saying, my dad was a priest before leaving and became an HR exec. Taught me a lot about human behavior and philosophy. That's awesome.
Wow, taking risk. Yeah, I mean, risk is a big part of it, and there's a great saying from a friend of mine.
Oh, hey, Grant. Sorry.
Aw.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah, Grant's sitting right here. He's right off to my side right now. But,
so I got a chance to yell at Chet, but I didn't get a chance to yell at Grant.
Oh, yep. We also got Ryan here too. So, no, the whole there's one thing I wanted to talk about. There is taking risk in live production, and there's a saying I remember from a friend of mine that the greater your comfort zone, the greater your reward zone. So the more things that you're comfortable with, which includes taking risk, you are able to go further and maybe come out, way better than you were before. I remember, going and taking on the master projectionist job at Cirque, being a bit scared going into union. I mean, I was, just to give you a frame of reference, I was like, I think 22, 23 at the time. And I knew I would be working with people much older, much more intimidating than me. It's a world-class show, but I was confident enough that I could get myself through it. And I was willing to take the risk to go and do that instead of staying on a show that's the same thing every day, day in, day out. So the whole, comment about entrepreneurs and learning how to take risk, I think that's important, but also judging what the risks are and having a backup plan for that.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I mean, I've definitely been a pretty good risk taker throughout my career. I've, started companies. I've ended companies. I probably shouldn't say that. In that there's context that needs to go there, but I've definitely taken a lot of risk, and I would say that there's been a lot of rewards that have come from that as well. And you definitely have to be willing to, I call it like, it's risk management, really. It's just being educated and making those educated risks, and of course having a backup plan if something fails.
Yeah,
I can't tell you the number of times I've been on a job site, like playing with new technology and reading instruction manuals, to figure out how it works.
No, I totally agree here with this comment that's up here about welcoming younger generations. I think anyone that knows me knows, like, I love, if somebody truly shows an interest in it, I typically will do whatever I can to help somebody out that's getting into the industry, but it's a two-way street. What sometimes I might say is, like, you need to go and read this book, and you know what? They never read it, so you're not going to take my advice or whatever, and then that's it. Like, it's not, I've noticed with some people that, they want it all handed to them, or like they expect to be given the best job right out the gate. But if you don't do your part, I'm not, I'm willing to work with you. Just, you got to put some effort in as well. But I'm a huge fan of giving opportunities to people to to excel. That's what I was given. Like, you look at me back in the day, it was like, well, he kind of, I come from Minneapolis, not very well known for entertainment at that time, of like entertainment technology, and people took a chance on me and really, helped me excel. I just, put everything I could into it. So I try to return the favor to those that gave me those opportunities. I
can honestly say that I think that kind of goes through our industry and resonates a lot through our industry. It's very passionate. You find a lot of the people that do a really good job in succeeding in this industry. I mean, there's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of passionate people, and there's a lot of compassion as well. And it's really, your story is absolutely phenomenal, but it's definitely one that resonates through our entire industry.
Yeah. I actually keep
you cannot help someone who cannot help themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, on my keychain, I have something to always remind me about giving opportunity. I have, in high school, the theater director gave me a key to the high school theater, and he unfortunately passed away, but it was like a master key that got me in everywhere, and never had to give it back. So I keep it on my keychain to remind me that, sometimes it's just giving someone access to something or whatever to then, see where somebody can go. You never know what way somebody might be able to take something that you give them. So, yeah. Thanks, Devin.
I'm just going to start calling you Yoda from now on.
Oh,
so yeah. Devin actually asked a question a little bit earlier, and honey, would you mind scrolling up? It was about interactive technologies. Yeah. So what emerging interactive technologies are you most excited about? And I think this is a great question because Drew, you can definitely speak on this, and then I can give my little take on it as well.
Yeah. So like everything you're seeing with gaming engines is really, really cool. If we boil it down, and this is me saying like, going back to understanding systems, essentially what you want to be able to do and what advances we're seeing is being able to capture what's happening in the real world and then combining that with the virtual world. So you're going to run into things like LiDAR being integrated, which then help capture people on a virtual set or on the real set, and then putting them into a virtual set and have that being interactive. That everyone's been working on that, of ways of capturing 3D world and combining it with virtual world. The next stuff that I am looking forward to is display technology. Everybody looks at their phone or a TV. There is like virtual reality goggles out there, but I've always been a huge fan of what you could do with augmented reality when it's really good. I go kind of straight off the path of like, to have really good AR, VR kind of stuff. You're talking like brain implants to stimulate the visual cortex and like that's
you mean Elon Musk kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff. Yeah, like that. Unfortunately, display technology, I think it's set to the side because as in innovations, when it comes to different ways of viewing things. Yeah, there's always people that are going to do brighter, more pixels, sub-pixels, all of that. But give me something that like is more than like what Pepper's Ghost was back in the day. Yeah, they were able to adapt it and make it use projection now with it, but I'd like something more than that out there, of like being able to put these digital things into the real world. So some of the stuff I see is from like Carnegie Mellon or MIT. Like there was, I want to say it's like probably 2 years ago, a game that was using, it was a soccer game. You were the goalie and you would try to block balls that were being shot at you. And if you made contact, there was actually a gimbal with a little air cannon on it. And as you would block it, you would feel something there, like something haptic. Like haptic. Yeah, haptic feedback. So that kind of stuff where you could make it, erase the lines between virtual world and real world. That's something I've been striving for all my life. all my career, I should say, not all my life. I wasn't thinking about that when I was. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, man, you've been
Yeah.
thinking about that when you just when you just popped out.
I was like, I made a poopy, but I really need to know. Okay. No.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Sorry. So what? Geoffrey, what's your thoughts on like what's new and hot and developing that you'd like to see?
I've always been, so for me, definitely the idea of being able to extend a virtual reality into reality has always, it's kind of like the holy grail. I think when somebody kind of works out a way to be able to do that in an affordable and widespread manner is kind of going to, really kind of break the code to be able to do that. But for me, I've always loved seeing, like, we created computers to help us do a lot of different things. Computers were built to help us as kind of like assistants, right? And oh God, yeah, the Power Glove, yeah, absolutely. But I've always been really interested, especially these days, that what really excites me is seeing computers like really evolve. And I've been loving following a lot of the artificial intelligence news and trends, and seeing how computers can learn not only from us, but can learn from each other. And I think that being able to integrate that technology or those technologies into what we do, could be absolutely tremendous in having kind of a different entity in some ways, being able to help us make decisions that we might not be able to see as through human eyes. And the other thing that really fascinates me too is computer vision and the advancements in computer vision. I mean, LiDAR is super cool and awesome, but again, being able to apply artificial intelligence to just a normal camera, like the webcams that we have in front of us, and having them being able to give us all kinds of different information and data for depth of field and position data just directly through a camera is super fascinating to me as well. And I think there's just, I think like for us right now in terms of tracking and where we are in tracking, of course, baby steps have to be taken to get somewhere, but tracking, I think, is still very much in its infancy. And I think that I know for a fact that there's already technologies out there, that are much more advanced than some of the stuff that we've been doing. And by the use of computer vision, I think that it could help advance the tracking technologies along quite a bit. Yeah. So I've always thought that is, and once that kind of comes into play, I mean, there's all kinds of privacy protections and all kinds of things that go into play by using cameras for things for us, but it also opens up just a tremendous amount of possibilities that can be used for so many different types of applications, from interactivity all the way through to, analytics, through to, helping us actually make better decisions. So
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the whole machine learning AI, like there's stuff I can't talk about, but like some of the stuff I could, like, say in theory, you teach your show, or I mean, you teach the machine learning, the AI, what your show should look like, and then having a system that could tell you safety wise, like, hey, this person's out of sync for notes, or like they're not in the right place for this act, and we know that a giant set piece is coming, like an early detection thing from that would be incredible.
Or even being able to make that decision, saying this person's behind sync, this is going to happen, so we're going to make this transition on the fly, and this person we know is available, so we're going to queue them on, and like it could be completely seamless.
Yeah, I saw a comment there about AI content.
Benjamin mentioned AI content creation.
Yeah, I have some issues with it. Like, there's a human touch. Like, yeah, AI content for, depending on your context is great, but, always having that human touch to it. I mean, you could say that you're teaching the AI, so it essentially is like human made because you're making the AI to make the content. But there's things in the industry where we do things because it's possible, and we don't ask why not. It's kind of like a reverse Hippocratic or a Hippocratic oath for technicians, I guess. I always try to use technology that's in support of a story, but that always requires there's humanness to it. I don't know how to better phrase that, but
yeah, I could agree with you 100%. I mean, there's always a human element of interaction that has to take play in the direction of something, at least for the time being, and where we are presently in technology. But I also feel that as we evolve and as we move forward in technology, and as the AI gets better and better and better and more educated, it might, once it's kind of a scary thought, but once a computer system can really, truly, intelligibly think for itself, that's where things might get really interesting, and we're already pretty darn close. It's kind of a scary
Well, you've
thought.
seen me on other episodes where I chime in. It's anything about data protection and what you could do with big data sets. I'm always that time period going to college before I switched to graphic design for my minor. I was into sociology and information computers and society, and that always made me aware of what the great power you could do with large data sets, but also what does that expose you to? What are some of the unintended consequences of that? And so like AI taking over and making our jobs obsolete, a little bit worried about that, but I think we're maybe a couple years away from that. Real-time content.
I could definitely say to Benjamin that, when I was working for Christie, it was showcased. Actually, I can openly talk about it, but, we showcased some earlier tools that were being prototyped and created inside of Christie using AI to do just that, to create different, basically kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Interstitiary kind of content, the little bits and pieces that can kind of go in between, transitions and transitional effects and things like that could be generated by AI. Style transfer has been around for quite a long time now, and it's kind of been an interesting exploration. I think the main reason why we haven't seen a lot of advancement in AI, let's say AI created content, is it just takes a really long time right now to be able to compute and render. Again, I'm kind of just speaking, so I haven't dabbled around in it too much recently, but being able to have real-time generated AI content is not currently feasible or not currently possible. I think once those boundaries are broken down and the technology advances and AI algorithms get better and the neural networks get better, then I think we'll start to see a lot more use cases for it in the future. And we're probably pretty close now. It's been getting better and better and better.
It kind of reminds me of a project. The projection designer for Chris Angel was the same guy that did Love, the Beatles Love show, Francis Laporte. And he told me about when he was going to university, how he did these pods that you would sit in, and everything was actually pre-sampled, but the computer would pick what to play. And he was saying to keep it human, he was using biofeedback. So like the skin elasticity, yep, heartbeat rates, all of that. And that would kind of, you're in this pod that had a screen over it, and they would try to see if they could manipulate your heart rate. So like to slow you down, they first do he did a flashing pattern on there, and then that matched your heart rate. And then they would try slowing down that flash pattern and see if that got the feedback. So things with AI that are still tied to the human part and that you might subconsciously know that are being affected by it. That kind of stuff I think is really cool, and is something that we might see moving forward. Of imagine having a star field that is rendered for you that is the stars are pulsing at your heart rate. You don't know that it is that, but you can feel some sort of connection with it. That's the kind of like psychological, technical things that I love diving into.
Touching on your deep psyche and your subliminal mind.
Yep. Like, oh man, we didn't even get to touch on like augmented reality shows. Like I wrote a whole like white paper on what you could do with that, and having it, be customized to you, but being a shared experience. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that could happen with that. And I'd love, once AR is out there enough and good enough quality where you don't see that scene between real world and the virtual world, I think there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that comes from that.
I think so too. I mean, I'm really looking forward to when wearable or AR glasses become much more mainstream. I have a friend of mine that I used to work with that moved over to a company called North that created kind of the first consumer-based wearable AR glasses that had some micro projection technologies built into them, and special lens filters and covers that would go over the glasses, and made them look very conventional. And I tried them out actually, and they were definitely pretty cool. Like they had some really neat features, but they still weren't really ready for showtime per se. For the general masses, there were a lot of little quirks and kinks, but it sounds like Apple's got some stuff that's going to be coming out this year, and some other companies are going to be releasing some new product. I believe North is they got acquired by a much larger company, and they're also planning on pushing another product out. So it's going to be really fascinating to see where things go from a consumer level, definitely from both consumer level and professional level, of course, over the next few years.
To see, I'm excited to see what people do with AR games, where it's not just like, let's build you like a mini putt-putt golf course is now on your dining room table. Like, I'd like to see something done more than that. And like, can you imagine horror games? That's going to be scary as all get out, of just like things popping through walls or whatever. Like,
and in your face.
Yeah. Black Mirror in real life. That's what I'm scared about.
That sounds, absolutely nuts. So Devin's got a great comment in there as well. But yeah, the human touch is absolutely extremely important. And, even concepts and being able to build the story and being able to build the storyline. I mean, you're always going to have a reason for doing something. And that always comes from a story of some sort that's been told, created, conceptualized, whatever. So there's always going to have to be that part. Well, Drew, I think we've come just about to the end of the time. So I just really wanted to thank you. It's been an awesome conversation. It's so much fun. If you guys want to...
I lost your audio.
You lost my audio. Well, it's a good time for it. But if you guys want
to... I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now. I think my AirPod died, but we're going to switch over the audio.
Okay. If you guys want to get more information on Drew, you could check out vyv.ca. And you can also reach Drew at vyv.us.com. Next week, we're going to have Vincent Steinbeck. I never get his... I just about had it. Steinhook on the show from Voke. You might remember Vincent from the XR panel that we conducted late last year. So come check that out next week. And also, if you guys have anything to spare, we do have a tip jar through aotc.one/hero. And Drew, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. I don't know if he's gotten the audio worked out yet.
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Awesome. Well, Drew, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yep. Thank you. Anyone feel free to reach out to me via email. I'm a friendly guy. Love to talk to you about anything that you want. So cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. And as I say every week, stay ahead of the curve. Bye, everyone.